Well, hey, welcome everybody to the Hydroplate Theory Week of Celebration, where we are honoring Dr. Walt Brown and the hydroplate theory, which is making accurate predictions and is being validated by NASA discoveries. And we are so excited to have a rocket scientist tonight. This is Harold Gilbert. He's got his master's degree from Auburn, and he's taking a bunch of time with us tonight. And so, thank you so much for being with us, Harold. And just how did you find out about the hydroplate theory? You probably didn't learn about it at Auburn now, did you?
About I don't know, about 5 to 10 years ago, I had a renewed interest in the creation story. I mean, I've been a Christian since I was 7 years old, and um, and so I just started reading pretty much all the literature on it. Right, I went through the journal creation and went through all the different creation magazines and things like that, and just read. I was just had a hunger for it. And I remember in my youth, I would defend it, but back then, of course, it was the canopy theory that was the big thing back then. Um, so I started watching videos. I ran across Bob Enyart's.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Bob Enyart at Real Science Radio, man. Everybody's got to plug into that. That's so much fun to listen to when I'm traveling.
And that's where I first heard about the hydroplate theory is on his show. And so that sort of sparked an interest to me, and I just started looking. I saw some of Walt Brown's videos. I actually ran across his, he has online, he has the sort of um, a summary of his hydroplate theory, and I read it. And then, of course, I ran across Brian Nichols' videos as well. And I just love the way that Brian had organized the videos. Being an engineer, I could see how much detail he put in it, and that I think that really spoke to me as an engineer, and I can appreciate the hard work that took.
Yeah, Brian Nickel videos are just phenomenal, man. It's so well illustrated, so well thought out, and so well delivered, man. Everybody should be checking that out. Yeah, and it's the engineers that really love this theory. It's the geologists that kind of balk at it. And we've been just so blessed that Bob Enyart there was kind of the tip of the spear, helping people, getting people to understand this hydroplate theory. And so we've been quite blessed with that.
Yes, and he had a little button on there that was like, scientists or engineers that support HPT, and so I eventually clicked it, and then he got me in touch with Brian, or yeah, well, Brian then was somehow ended up emailing me, and so I started having a dialogue with him, and I was able to, go through some of the things that he's working through, and that was really good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, Bob Enyart, he's made a tremendous advancement in science, getting this into the mainstream. And as an engineer, what do you think the strongest case is for hydroplate theory? What's the best evidence?
Let me back up first. As a Christian, let me answer that question first. As a
Mhm.
Christian, what really speaks to me is the way he defines uh, the firmament. When I was in my youth, I remember reading through it, and at one time I thought I'm just going to simply go through it and read it. And when I came to that day two, when the firmament was made, the word firmament just seemed to shout that it was the foundation, right? It was a firm, a solid expanse. But of course, then if you continue reading, it's God called it heaven, and then in day four, the sun, moon, and stars are created in the firmament. So of course, that word firmament was when I in my bubbles back in the day that's the word that was used, right? It was not the word expanse. The word expanse has really only been used that I know of in the last 20 or so years. So I like the way that he made it into a solid expanse. He can explain it as a solid expanse, and that just sort of I think fits really well when you try to interpret it. The one of the articles I read that was trying to explain the firmament um, in the journal Creation. They were trying to say it's all like a spatial expanse, right? The models that they had, and they even have problems trying to figure out exactly what it means. Is it the sky? Is it the whole vault of heaven, that sort of thing? And but they never really looked at trying to explain it as a solid expanse. So I was a little bit disappointed in that. But I think that's the right thing.
Yeah, I'm still dealing with that firmament thing myself. I think that with the hydroplate theory, I think the overall concept is solid. There might be a detail or two that's not quite right, but I think with the accurate predictions and the NASA discoveries, I think it's on the right track and it's a very robust theory. And it's a shame that it's been kicked to the curb for so long.
Yes. Now, as far as like physical evidence, I think the lithosphere is probably one of the best explanations about it. Now, the lithosphere, I had a hard problem figuring out exactly what that meant, but it's just a zone. It doesn't go very far deep into the earth. It's basically the sort of the crust and also includes some of the upper mantle. Um, and it's really interesting the way the lithosphere works. It looks like it's just the mechanical properties of it. Um, it all looks like it's just one zone, but it actually is two different rock types. It includes the continental crust and then the upper mantle. And so their mechanical strengths should be different, but they're not. And so I think what has happened is that lithosphere has had heat applied to it, right? And that heat sort of expands it. And that's why you have the sort of the mechanical failures that you have. And hydroplate does a really good job of explaining, that water as it heats up,
Oh,
it
yeah.
will.
Yeah, and that supercritical water and that heat and all that, it's just all these laws of physics that Walt Brown's been able to tie together. And it's just like having the exam before, the answers for the exam. But with that lithosphere, how deep does that go?
The lithosphere goes down, I think about 50 kilometers, 50 to 100 kilometers. It varies
Okay.
over.
So that's above the crossover depth, the crossover density. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, it includes a part of the upper mantle as well. So that heat, heat's going to transfer, right?
Yeah,
And so that's what the hydroplate theory has initially has the water, the liquid water between the continental crust and the upper mantle. And so
right.
once that starts heating up due to friction, it's going to that heat is going to transfer up into the continental crust and down into the upper mantle. And you can see, and once things start heating up, they expand. And you can see that those two, that zone, and includes just the mechanical failures of that zone that is really interesting to me.
Yeah, and so that crossover depth, for those who are listening who may not have heard that concept before, could you explain that a little more de in detail?
Yes, crossover depth is so when you get past the lithosphere, there's actually so the bottom of the lithosphere would be where the crossover zone is, right? So
Okay,
beyond the lithosphere, you can actually have the crust. It can be in liquid form, I guess. Is that the best way to say it? So that's in the anosphere area, and so because it's a liquid, it's very compressed. And
yep,
so the density of that liquid is greater than the local density of the solid. So it can't go up.
right.
It can only go down.
One of
Once
the,
it gets into the lithosphere, that's the pressure is not as great, so it's not as dense. And so then it can actually go up.
but right, so not all the way to the surface then, right?
Right. But well, it's still in a solid, so it has
Yeah.
to work its way.
And so that crossover density, that's one of the problems with seafloor spreading. You're saying that once that stuff gets to the bottom, gets so deep, it's going to keep going down and it's not gonna go back up.
Yes. The other area is I think is also in the what they're finding out in the asteroids and comets. That obviously in hydroplate theory, it explains it as
Mhm.
the asteroid and comets coming from the crust, the upper mantle, and also the crust as it goes up into the air. Um, and I don't know if you saw there's an article yesterday from the Real Clear Science that Japan had collected some samples from an asteroid back in 2008, and they've got those samples back, and they're looking at them. Well, their latest discussion in the article, it talked about that the asteroid at one time had running water in it.
Good.
So liquid water.
Yeah.
No, liquid water in space is
Well,
not.
yeah.
So how did they, you know, they came to that conclusion. But so if that's true, then, hydroplate theory could explain that really well. I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
it was liquid water as it went up into the air. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it seems like whenever they find something in the universe, it validates the hydroplate theory. And I think the hydroplate will destroy the Big Bang when it gets into the mainstream. It's just been censored and kicked to the curb. Or, if you start supporting it, you might get blackballed, even in creation organizations, which is really a travesty, really. And that's not how it should be. And that's like when you signed, or even the evolutionists for sure, and the Big Bangers, they aren't going to like the hydroplate theory, and you could lose your job. But when you signed that document on or clicked on Real Science Radio, where you're a scientist that supports the hydroplate theory, was there any pushback from where you work? Or
Oh, no, no, no.
good,
I mean, I don't know if anybody really cares at work. I mean, what I do at work is has nothing to do with creation or anything like
right?
that.
Yeah, but if you were a geologist or biologist or astronomer and you had this hydroplate view, they might take another look at you and make things a little more difficult. I know Jerry Bergman, he's written 3 volumes on people who've been persecuted because they were creationists, or even if they just doubted the paradigm of evolution or the Big Bang, which is just a tragedy again.
Where I work, there's several people who believe in the creation. So it's been a very good to talk to them about the hydroplate theory and things like that.
Yeah, and what a blessing it is that Walt Brown did all that research, reading all those scientific journals and tying all those pieces together. I can't imagine all the thousands of tens of thousands of hours looking at this and studying it and then putting it into an understandable presentation with all his footnotes. It's technical and yet it's easy enough for people to understand it and to go Walt Brown surfing from one topic to the other. This is a prototype of the ninth edition that's got 300 pages. The ninth edition is going to have 600 pages with the radioactivity chapter. And he says, if this is wrong, we'll fix it. We'll correct it. That's no problem. He doesn't have his ego tied to this. It's his income doesn't depend on this. He says if it's wrong, and he never says the word prove. In science, you never prove anything. In math, you do, but not science because you never have all the information. So yeah, he's it's a tremendous work that he's done, and we need to move this ball down the court or down the field scientifically. And so thank you, Dr. Brown.
That's good to know. I've never met Walt Brown, and that's one of a disappointment, I guess. But I guess one day, hopefully, I get to talk to him up in heaven or somewhere like that. But yeah. So yesterday I was no 2 days ago I was listening online. Just a guy named John Barnett. He talked about how us as Christians, we have a unique um, uh, ability here on earth, and that unique ability is obviously to reveal who God is. And so I think, yeah, Walt Brown, I think he did his job in
Oh,
revealing
yeah.
who God is, and I want to thank him for that because that's been a really, has really been inspirational to me.
Yeah, and what a blessing that Walt Brown made something for us. It's going to live on after him, and even Bob Enyart too. His shows live on after him, and what a tremendous blessing that is. I know something that really impacted my life was the Walt Brown Week on RSR. Going to rsr.org and search Walt Brown Week, and he was interviewed 5 days, and it just colored in all the details. And I've never seen the world the same since then and into the solar system. So our goal is that we need to get this into the next generation, because if it doesn't get in there, this theory could die on the vine. So we need more people to get informed and inform others and pick up the torch and advance, shed the light in this dark world. And this is a powerful tool to do it. Walt's biography is in a book called Christian Men of Science: 11 Men Who Changed the World. and it's got some big hitters in there like Maxwell and I think Faraday and just some huge, huge guys. And then there's Walt. And I read that. It's an audiobook. I put it on my YouTube channel. That's on Solidify Your Faith. And it's an hour and 40 minutes. And for some reason, Zoom didn't kick me off at 40 minutes. And Walt Brown, I think he's like today's Isaac Newton. And it's really a shame that I mean, that's what used to motivate me, that I wanted him to get the credit before he died, you know? And then after NASA did this DART blunder, they ignored Kevin Lee's warning of what could happen if those are boulders instead of a rock. Then I was motivated to get this out there before NASA makes another another catastrophic blunder. And now I'm motivated to destroy the Big Bang. This theory will destroy the Big Bang once enough people know about it. So again, we just need people to pick up the ball and run as far as you can down the down as far as you can down the field and give it to somebody else and mentor people to do what you've done so we can make this big snowball that they're going to have a hard time stopping. A big avalanche of truth coming at people. You know, and then trying to get people equipped and get it into the mainstream. Do you have any ideas on how we could do that?
Mainstream, I assume you're meaning into more into the young Earth creation mainstream. Is that
It's like, no, no, we're going after the big guys, the evolutionists and the big bangers. You know, that's where I'm going. But I think you're right. The first domino that needs to fall is the creation organizations. And I think there should be a race amongst the museums to see which museum will allow us to think first. Because to think, you need to see all the information to make an informed decision. You need to see another perspective, so you can think critically and compare and contrast. And what's happening in the evolution museums, you know, the big bangers, it's just got the Big Bang and evolution. That's all you can think about. But in the creation museums, when they have a flood model, it's just catastrophic plate tectonics. That's the only one. And they should have another one so we can compare and contrast. So we'll see which creation museum is going to be the first one to do that, because I think that's going to be a big feather in their hat when future generations look back at this. So which one's going to lead us out of the dark ages? And I hope they race quickly and get this into their museums.
yeah, like I think you're right. I think we need to get it into the young Earth, at least get it into the way of thinking, right? I mean, as a possibility that it is a solid expanse, and that's what I would focus on is discussing how that can be interpreted. A possible interpretation
Sure.
of the expanse is it that it's solid, and
Yeah, and there's verses you don't even have to interpret, you know, the fountains of the great deep and the storehouses of water, and he laid the earth upon the seas. You know, there's clearly water inside the earth. For the that justifies the hydroplate theory. And I asked one of the catastrophic plate tectonic experts, you know, what biblical verses support CPT? And he basically just said, you know, Genesis 6 to whatever, you know, which is just anybody's. That doesn't distinguish that from anybody else's. But the hydroplate has specific verses, about a dozen of them at least, in the Bible that point to water inside the earth. So that puts it above the other theories. Plus, it's making accurate predictions. I asked that same expert, you know, what predictions has the CPT made and which ones are accurate? You know, what ones do they have right now? And he basically said they don't make predictions. And so I think that we could save a lot of time and a lot of effort. Like if Walt Brown says, you know, don't let anybody be published until they make an accurate prediction. You know, that would save us a lot of time and a lot of money.
his model also requires a miracle as well,
Oh, yeah.
just setting it up in the initial conditions. I mean, how do you set that up? I mean, that's a very difficult thing to do, and
Right.
that's not the way the plates look normally.
And
So it
then,
had to be some extraordinary conditions to make that happen.
yeah, yeah, like what broke up the plates? How did subduction begin? Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions there. A lot of miracles, really.
And once it gets started, I mean, it is a more of a natural thing, but you know, that's the problem. How do you get that initial condition without it starting, earlier?
Yeah, that's Fred McNabb's next video. He's got a good channel on YouTube. It's called Fred McNabb, and they're kind of like Brian Nickel videos for young people. And I think that's why he made them for the his grandkids, so they could understand it. And it's very well animated, excellent graphics, especially his folded rock layers. I don't know where he got them, but those are amazing. But yeah, he talks about I don't know how many miracles he has for for catastrophic plate tectonics. I know Bob Enyart talks about him at the end of one of his talks, and then also Walt Brown. He's got a list of I think 6 or 7 miracles that have to take place for catastrophic plate tectonics to work. And I do a video on that called Problems with Plate Tectonics, I think it was. So I kind of condense all those to get it into a more refined version.
But to be honest, the geologies and stuff like that, geologists, they look at it from what we have now and try to, go into the past,
Yeah,
right? So I think as Christians, we have actually a better, we have a little bit more insight, right? We not only can do that, take what conditions down, put it in the past, but we also know what the initial conditions are, right? So we can work at it both ways,
yeah.
while geologists only can do it in one direction. So I think that's a huge advantage. But of course, it's understanding what happened during creation week.
Hmm.
That is the really the biggest issue I think for
Yeah.
us.
Yes, what happened during creation week, what happened building up to the flood and during the flood, and even what's happening today. We're still recovering from the flood. With the ice age and the earthquakes, the earth is still recovering from that. And so it's exciting times we're living on.
So I think the problem with the young creation movement is they focus kind of on the asteroids and the heat problem and all that kind of stuff. Um, and they can find problems and issues with it. But I think if we sort of take that initial step, you know, in the scriptures that we can agree on, or that we
Yeah.
can say it's possible, come up with evidence for that to be true.
And those decision tables that Walt Brown has at the end of every chapter, he's got the theories on top and he's got the features on the side, and Hydroplate's green all the way down, and everybody else is red and yellow with a couple of greens. So again, this is time that this theory gets analyzed, and it would be a great step forward to science if a creation museum would allow people to think about both theories instead of just presenting one as dogma. That's not science. That's just as bad as what the evolutionists do. We have a higher standard. Let's let all the information be out there so people can make informed decisions.
Has anybody ever tried to write an article like to the journal Creation about interpreting the expanse as a solid expanse, or
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's written on that. I know people have tried to submit hydroplate papers to the ICC, the International Creation Conference, and they were rejected because you got the plate tectonics people deciding who gets to speak. And so, but I think as when people go to the museums, when people listen to these creation speakers, I think they should start talking about hydroplate, start asking about hydroplate. What do you think of the hydroplate? And they'll say it doesn't work. And then you could say, well, why doesn't it work? And this happened to me, personal experience. And the guy said, well, it breaks laws of physics. And I said, what laws of physics? And he says, I don't know. But the geologists that he knows, the creation geologists, don't go along with the hydroplate. And so just keep bringing it up. But I know it's starting to change. That Dr. Randy Galuza, he invited some HPT people to speak at ICR because he wanted to hear about what the hydroplate people say, not what people say about the hydroplate people. There's a big difference there. And it's just a tremendous blessing to have people who want to follow the science wherever it goes, and they're not biased by their brand or by their organization or by the books that they're selling. They want science to advance. And I really have a lot of respect for people who do that. And I do not have any respect for people who oppose that. And so let's get the respectable people in charge. And hopefully this thing the dam breaks sooner than later so more people can have their faith solidified and not end up in hell by rejecting the God of the Bible. Yeah, and the more we get this out in the mainstream, the bigger chip, we're just going to keep chipping on this dam, this censorship dam. We're going to keep chipping, and once it cracks, man, it's going to flood this culture and flood society with truth, and then we can go have a cultural revolution, an intellectual revolution, where we can think outside this intolerant dogma of materialism. All there is matter and energy, which is patently absurd. This isn't blind. This isn't creation versus. This isn't science versus religion. This is blind chance versus creation. And so we need to start defining the terms that way. We need to start getting equipped, and we need to start pushing this ball down the field so science can advance and get us out of this dark ages. All right. Well, thank you so much, Harold. I do appreciate the time that you've taken here, and let you get on with the. Do you have any closing comments that you would like to leave us with?
No, I just appreciate, Walt Brown, and just pray, just thankful that he was, honored God, and actually, God allowed him to come up with his theory, and that it may take a little while, but I think eventually people will see the uniqueness about it, and they also will see how it can explain a lot of things in the Bible, as
Yeah.
well as the physical
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah, thank God for what Walt Brown did, and hopefully people see this. And I met a lot of people, they want things to get better, they pray for things to get better. That's our head and our heart. But we need more people to do something to get better. That's the hands and the feet. We need people to put their faith into action because there's a lost and dying world out there, and they're putting their faith in the Big Bang and evolution because they don't have a theory that's making accurate predictions. And so I encourage heart in your hands, and thank you so much for your part in this battle.
Oh, thank you, Brian. I enjoyed it.